The morning mist clung to Pine Ridge like a secret that refused to be told. Chen stood at the edge of Copper Falls, her binoculars trained on the valley below where a lost hiker had last been spotted. The search and rescue radio crackled. With static, voices of other volunteers reporting negative sightings from their sectors. Emma's voice cut through the chatter, calm and precise. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Base, this is Eagle Point. I have visual on the subject. Male, approximately 6'2", red jacket, conscious but injured. Grid reference 77 Alpha 4. She paused, adjusting her focus. He's got a compound fracture on his left leg. We need a medical evac, not a ground extraction. The rescue. Coordinator's voice came back immediately. Emma, that's 3 miles from where we projected his location. How can you be certain? Emma smiled slightly, lowering her binoculars. Through the scope of her spotting equipment, she could see details that would be invisible to others at this distance. The way the man favored his left side, the tear-in. His jacket that matched the description from his hiking partner, even the brand of his backpack. Details that came from years of training her eyes to see what others missed. Trust me, Jim, I'm looking right at him. Within 20 minutes, Emma had guided the helicopter to the exact location, and the hiker was being airlifted to safety. It was the 4th successful rescue she'd led this month, each one adding to her reputation as Pine Ridge's most reliable search and rescue volunteer. The locals called her Eagle Eye Emma, joking that she could spot a penny from a mile away. They had no idea how close to the truth they were. Chen had been living in Pine Ridge for 8 years, running summit gear and guide services from a converted cabin on the outskirts of town. The shop was part outdoor equipment store, part guide service, and part local gathering place for hunters and hikers who respected Emma's knowledge of the mountain terrain. She was 34, though her weathered hands and steady demeanor made her seem older. Her black hair was usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her dark eyes held a depth that made people instinctively trust her judgment. The town knew her as quiet but reliable, someone who could navigate the treacherous mountain passes in any weather, and who never seemed to panic under pressure. She wore the same practical uniform every day: hiking boots, cargo pants, and a fleece jacket over a thermal shirt. A small scar ran along her left temple, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. When asked about it, she'd simply say it was from a climbing accident years ago. What the residents of Pine Ridge didn't know was that Chen was not her real name. The woman who sold camping gear and led tourists on nature walks had once been Sergeant Emma Delacroix, call sign Sparrow, one of the most lethal snipers in the United States military. The scar on her temple wasn't from a climbing accident. Was from shrapnel during her last official mission, a mission that had ended with her entire unit presumed dead and her own identity erased from every military database. Every evening after closing the shop, Emma would walk the half-mile to her real home, a reinforced cabin hidden among the pine trees where the road became too narrow for most vehicles. Inside, behind a false wall that looked like a gun cabinet, for hunting rifles was her true equipment. A custom Barrett M82 sniper rifle, modified with components that didn't appear in any civilian catalog. Night vision scopes that rivaled military spec equipment. Communication devices that could reach satellites the government insisted didn't exist. The rifle was her constant companion during those evening walks through the forest. She'd built a shooting range in a natural depression between 2 hills, completely invisible from any hiking trail. There, she maintained her skills with the same dedication she'd once brought to military service. The locals occasionally heard the distant crack of rifle fire, but they assumed it was just Emma practicing for hunting season. They never imagined she was maintaining abilities that could put a bullet through a target at distances that would make most professional snipers weep with envy. Emma's daily routine was carefully structured to maintain her cover while keeping her skills sharp. She'd wake at dawn, check weather conditions, and monitor emergency radio frequencies while preparing coffee. The morning ritual included scanning news feeds for any unusual military activity, though she'd found nothing concerning in the past 3 years. She'd convinced herself that her old life was truly buried, that the woman who'd once been considered too emotionally stable for the psychological brutality of extended combat operations had successfully disappeared. The irony wasn't lost on her. In the military, her psychological evaluations had consistently noted her excessive empathy and reluctance to engage in prolonged aggressive action. Her commanding officers had expressed concerns about her emotional resilience during sustained combat operations. They'd called her soft in the way that military leadership often dismissed soldiers who showed too much consideration for collateral damage or who hesitated before taking shots that might endanger civilians. But Emma had never been soft. She'd simply been precise. While other snipers focused on body counts and confirmed kills, Emma had focused on surgical precision, on ending conflicts with minimal casualties, on protecting her team through accuracy rather than aggression. Her psychological profile had missed the crucial element that made her exceptional: her ability to remain calm and focused under extreme pressure, while maintaining the emotional intelligence to make split-second decisions that saved lives. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers to Summit Gear, mostly tourists preparing for day hikes and local hunters checking their equipment before the season began. Emma moved through the familiar routine of providing advice, selling gear, and sharing knowledge about the mountain trails. She could identify the experience level of any customer within minutes, adjusting her recommendations accordingly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The nervous city dwellers got basic safety lectures and conservative trail suggestions. The experienced outdoorsmen got detailed topographical advice and warnings about weather patterns. Sheriff Tom Bradley stopped by around 3, ostensibly to check on the morning's rescue, but really to enjoy Emma's coffee and company. Tom was 58, a lifelong Pine Ridge resident who'd seen the town change from a logging community to a tourist destination. He'd developed a protective fondness for Emma, appreciating her willingness to drop everything when someone needed help in the mountains. "Another perfect rescue," Tom said, settling into the chair beside Emma's counter. "That's what, 15 this year. You're making the rest of us look bad." Emma smiled, pouring coffee from the perpetual pot she kept brewing. "Just good equipment and better weather. Summer's been kind to us. Emma, I've been doing search and rescue for 30 years. What you do isn't just good equipment. You see things the rest of us miss." Tom accepted the coffee gratefully. "Makes me wonder what you did before you came to Pine Ridge." It was a question Tom had asked indirectly many times, always with the casual curiosity of someone who'd spent decades reading people. Emma had her standard response ready. "Worked for a private security company. Mostly boring corporate stuff, but it taught me to pay attention to details." Tom nodded, accepting the answer as he always did, but Emma caught the slight hesitation in his expression. She'd been careful to construct a believable background, complete with employment records and references that would satisfy casual investigation. But Tom was an experienced law enforcement officer, and something about her story had never quite satisfied him. The truth was that Emma Delacroix had been recruited into Shadow Company directly from sniper school, where her instructors had noted her unusual combination of technical skill and emotional stability. Most military snipers developed a psychological distance from their targets, a necessary defense mechanism that allowed them to function in their role. Emma had developed something different, the ability to maintain full emotional awareness while making life-and-death decisions with surgical precision. Shadow Company had been designed for operations that required extreme accuracy with minimal collateral damage. They were sent into situations where a single misplaced shot could create international incidents, where success was measured not just by mission completion, but by the absence of unintended casualties. Emma had thrived in that environment, becoming known for her ability to neutralize threats while protecting civilians and avoiding escalation. The company's missions had taken them to places that didn't appear on any official map, dealing with situations that couldn't be acknowledged by any government. They'd prevented terrorist attacks, eliminated high-value targets, and provided overwatch for diplomatic missions in hostile territories. Emma had been the unit's primary sniper, capable of making shots that her teammates called impossible, while maintaining the emotional clarity to abort missions when civilian safety was at risk. But Shadow Company had accumulated too many secrets, too much knowledge about operations that powerful people wanted forgotten. The unit had been disbanded officially, but Emma and her teammates had learned that disbanded in their case meant eliminated. One by one, her former colleagues had died in accidents, training mishaps, and operations gone wrong. Emma had realized the pattern just in time to disappear, creating the identity of Emma Chen and vanishing into the Montana wilderness. As evening approached, Emma closed the shop and began her nightly routine. She walked the familiar path through the forest, checking for signs of unusual activity while her trained senses cataloged every sound and movement. The Barrett rifle was concealed in a modified hiking pack, its weight familiar and comforting. She'd modified the weapon extensively, improving its accuracy and reducing its signature while maintaining the devastating power that made it effective at extreme ranges. The shooting range was a natural amphitheater carved by erosion between two hills, completely hidden from any hiking trail or aerial observation. Emma had spent months preparing the site, creating berms and backstops that would contain her practice rounds while providing realistic training scenarios. She'd set up targets at various distances, from standard sniper ranges to the extreme distances that had made her legendary within Shadow Company. Tonight's practice session was routine maintenance, keeping her skills sharp through repetition and muscle memory. She settled into her shooting position, controlling her breathing and heart rate with the meditative focus she developed over years of training. The first shot was at 800 yards, a standard engagement distance. The bullet struck the target center mass, exactly where she'd aimed. The second shot was at 1,200 yards, requiring adjustment for wind and elevation. Another perfect hit. Emma continued through her routine, extending the range with each shot until she was engaging targets at distances that would challenge Olympic marksmen. Each shot was precise, controlled, and executed with the same calm focus that had made her legendary. As she packed up her equipment, Emma allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 8 years of hiding hadn't dulled her skills or weakened her resolve. She was still capable of everything she'd been trained to do, still ready to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. The woman her former commanders had called too soft for extended combat had become something more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. A protector who chose when and how to engage, guided by conscience rather than orders. The walk back to her cabin was peaceful, filled with the sounds of nocturnal wildlife and the whisper of wind through pine needles. Emma felt the deep satisfaction that came from maintaining excellence, from staying ready for challenges that might never come. She'd built a good life in Pine Ridge, helping people in ways that felt meaningful and honest. The rescue work gave her purpose, the shop provided community connection, and the hidden practice sessions kept her true skills sharp. But as she approached her cabin, Emma noticed something that made her blood run cold. Tire tracks in the soft earth beside her driveway, too fresh to be from her own vehicle and too heavy to be from any civilian car. Military suspension left a distinctive impression, and Emma had learned to read those signs during her years in Shadow Company. Someone had been here, someone who knew how to approach quietly and leave minimal evidence. Inside the cabin, everything appeared normal, but Emma's trained senses detected subtle signs of intrusion. A coffee cup had been moved slightly from its usual position. The newspaper was folded differently than she'd left it. Most tellingly, the dust pattern on her bookshelf had been disturbed, indicating someone had examined the titles carefully. Emma moved to her hidden weapons cache, checking to ensure nothing had been disturbed. The false wall was intact, the equipment undisturbed, but the very fact that someone had been in her home meant her carefully constructed anonymity was compromised. After 8 years of successful hiding, something had changed. She activated the secure communication device she'd hoped never to use again, a satellite phone that connected to frequencies monitored by only a few people in the world. The device powered up after a brief delay, displaying a single message. Indicator: someone had been trying to reach her. The message was brief and unsigned. Package delivered. Confirm receipt. Time sensitive. Below it was a grid reference that corresponded to a location about 20 miles north of Pine Ridge, deep in the wilderness where few tourists ventured. Emma recognized the code structure from her shadow company days. Someone was trying to make contact using protocols that officially didn't exist. Emma spent the next hour checking her security systems and reviewing the evidence of intrusion. Whoever had entered her cabin was skilled, professional, and familiar with counter-surveillance techniques. They'd left just enough signs to confirm their presence without revealing their identity or intentions. It was a message in itself: we know where you are, and we can reach you anytime. The grid reference in the message led to an area Emma knew well, a remote valley accessible only by hiking trails and helicopter. If someone wanted to meet her there, they were either very confident in their own abilities or they were setting a trap. Either way, Emma realized her quiet life in Pine Ridge was about to become complicated. She spent the rest of the evening preparing for possibilities she'd hoped never to face again. Equipment was checked, emergency protocols were reviewed, and alternate identities were prepared for activation. Emma Chen, the helpful shop owner and search and rescue volunteer, might need to disappear forever. The question was whether Sparrow would need to emerge from her long hibernation to protect the life she'd built. As midnight approached, Emma made her decision. Tomorrow she would investigate the grid reference and discover who was trying to make contact. She would face whatever threat had found her hiding place, using skills that her former commanders had considered too gentle for real combat. They'd called her soft, but Emma knew the truth. She wasn't soft, she was precise. And precision, applied with the right motivation, could be the most dangerous force in the world. The woman who'd once been dismissed as emotionally unsuitable for sustained combat operations, prepared for what might be her most challenging mission yet. Protecting the life she'd built in Pine Ridge and the people who'd become her family would require every skill she'd developed and every lesson she'd learned. Emma Chen was about to discover just how hard soft could be when pushed to its limits. Emma woke before dawn, her internal clock still operating on military precision despite years of civilian life. The secure communication device sat silent on her nightstand, but the message from the previous evening had changed everything. She moved through her morning routine with heightened awareness, checking sight lines from her windows and noting the position of every vehicle in town as she prepared for what could be her last day as Emma Chen, the 20-mile hike to the grid. Reference would take her through terrain she knew intimately, but approaching the meeting point would require tactical consideration. If this was a trap, she needed to control the engagement from a position of advantage. If it was legitimate contact from her past, she needed to be ready for information that might force her to abandon everything she'd built in Pine Ridge. Emma packed her gear with the methodical efficiency that had made her legendary in Shadow Company. The modified Barrett rifle was broken down and distributed throughout her hiking pack, camouflaged among legitimate outdoor equipment. Ammunition was concealed in false compartments designed to pass casual inspection. Emergency supplies, medical kit, and communication equipment were arranged for rapid access, while maintaining the appearance of a routine backcountry expedition. The trail to the meeting point began at Morgan's Creek, a popular fishing spot where her presence would attract no attention. Emma signed the trail register with her usual careful signature, noting the time and intended destination as she'd done hundreds of times before. To anyone watching, she appeared to be conducting a routine wilderness survey, the kind of solo expedition that had become her trademark in Pine Ridge. The first 8 miles passed through familiar territory, well-marked trails that Emma had guided tourists along countless times. She maintained a steady pace while her trained senses cataloged every detail of the environment. No unusual tracks, no signs of recent human passage, no indication that anyone else was moving through the area. Either her contact was extremely skilled at concealment, or they hadn't arrived yet. At the 10-mile mark, Emma left the established trail and began moving through unmarked wilderness. This was territory that required genuine outdoors expertise, where a single wrong turn could lead to cliffs or impassable terrain. She'd explored this area extensively during her early years in Pine Ridge, mapping routes and hiding spots that weren't recorded on any official survey. If she needed to disappear quickly, this was her element. The terrain grew more challenging as she climbed toward the designated meeting point. Ancient pines gave way to exposed rock faces and narrow ridges that required careful navigation. Emma's breathing remained steady despite the altitude and exertion, her body still conditioned by years of mountain living and daily physical training. She'd maintained her fitness not just for the rescue work, but for moments exactly like this one. As she approached the final ridge before the meeting point, Emma detected the first sign of human presence. A single boot print in soft earth, partially concealed but clearly recent. The tread pattern was military specification, designed for mountain terrain and extended wear. Whoever had made this print was skilled enough to minimize their trail, but not skilled enough to eliminate it entirely. Emma assembled her rifle with practiced efficiency, the familiar weight settling into her hands like a greeting from an old friend. The scope revealed the meeting point in detail, a natural clearing surrounded by elevated positions that could provide cover for observers. It was tactically sound terrain, offering multiple escape routes while providing clear sight lines in all directions. Movement in the tree line caught her attention. A figure emerged from concealment, moving with the careful deliberation of someone who understood they were being observed. Emma adjusted her scope, bringing the person into sharp focus. Male, approximately 40 years old, wearing civilian hiking gear that couldn't quite conceal his military bearing. His movement patterns and awareness of cover suggested professional training, but something about his posture indicated he wasn't expecting immediate threat. Emma recognized him as she watched him settle into a position that provided defensive cover while remaining visible from her overwatch position. Marcus Williams, her former spotter and closest friend from Shadow Company. The man she'd assumed was dead for 8 years was very much alive, and he'd found her hiding place. The recognition hit Emma like a physical blow. Marcus had been her partner on dozens of missions, the voice in her ear that had guided her shots and watched her back through situations that had tested both their skills and their trust. He'd been declared killed in action during Shadow Company's final mission, his body supposedly unrecoverable from the explosion that had marked the unit's official end. Emma maintained her position, using the scope to study Marcus for any signs of deception or threat. His gear was civilian but high quality, his weapons were concealed but present, and his overall demeanor suggested someone who'd been living carefully for years. Most importantly, he was alone, which indicated either confidence in his ability to handle whatever meeting he'd arranged, or genuine trust that Emma wouldn't simply eliminate him from her current position. After 20 minutes of observation, Emma was satisfied that Marcus represented no immediate threat. She secured her position and began the careful descent toward the meeting point, approaching from an angle that would keep her out of any potential crossfire while maintaining escape routes. Years of tactical training had taught her never to assume safety, even with former allies. Marcus looked up as Emma emerged from the tree line, his expression showing relief mixed with apprehension. He'd aged in the years since their last mission, his face showing the weathered lines of someone who'd spent time in harsh environments. His hands remained visible and away from his weapons, a gesture of good faith that Emma appreciated while remaining alert for deception. "Hello, Sparrow," Marcus said quietly, using her old call sign with the same respectful tone he'd employed during their operational years. "It's good to see you alive." Emma kept her rifle ready, but not directly threatening, positioned to respond to danger while avoiding unnecessary provocation. "You're supposed to be dead, Marcus. We all are. Officially, we still are. Shadow Company never existed, remember?" Marcus gestured toward a fallen log that would provide seating while keeping them both in the open. "But you know how these things work. Being dead on paper doesn't mean being safe in reality." Emma settled into a position that maintained tactical advantage while allowing conversation. "You've been hiding for 8 years. Why surface now?" Marcus reached into his pack slowly, producing a tablet computer that he activated with careful deliberation. "Because they're not finished with us. The people who disbanded Shadow Company, who arranged our deaths, they're cleaning house. And they're using a new generation of operators to do it." The tablet displayed a series of photographs and documents that made Emma's blood run cold. Images of her former teammates, marked with dates and locations that corresponded to their reported deaths. But these weren't accident reports or training mishaps. They were assassination records, detailed accounts of how each Shadow Company member had been eliminated by operatives who'd been told they were hunting rogue agents. David Torres died in a climbing accident in Colorado. Except the accident happened during a controlled ascent with safety equipment that had been deliberately sabotaged. Marcus swiped to the next image. Sarah Mitchell died in a car crash in Oregon. Single vehicle accident caused by brake failure that forensic analysis showed was induced by remote manipulation. Emma studied the evidence with growing horror. Her former teammates, people she'd trusted with her life and who'd trusted her with theirs, had been systematically murdered by their own government. The official explanations had been carefully constructed to avoid investigation, but someone had been documenting the truth. "How many?" Emma asked quietly. 7 of the original 12-member unit, plus support staff and anyone who might have had operational knowledge. Marcus closed the tablet. "They're calling it Operation Silent Storm, eliminating witnesses to missions that were too sensitive for normal classification." Emma felt the familiar calm that preceded combat operations, the mental state that allowed her to process overwhelming information while maintaining tactical awareness. "Who's running it?" "Colonel James Parker. You remember him as Major Parker, our liaison with Pentagon intelligence. He's been promoted, given expanded authority, and tasked with managing the shadow operations that grew out of our original mission parameters." The name brought back memories Emma had tried to suppress. Parker had been their handler during Shadow Company's most sensitive missions, the man who'd provided intelligence and extracted them from situations that had grown beyond their original scope. He'd also been the one who'd consistently questioned Emma's psychological fitness for extended combat operations. "Parker always thought I was too soft for the work," Emma said. "He wanted me replaced with someone who wouldn't hesitate to take difficult shots. That's exactly why you're still alive. He assumed you'd disappear into civilian life and never be a threat. The others were considered more dangerous, more likely to cause problems if they decided to go public with what they knew." Marcus activated the tablet again, showing Emma a recruitment document that bore official military insignia. "But now he's building a new unit. Shadow Company 2.0, with operators who won't ask questions, and won't develop inconvenient moral concerns about their missions. Emma studied the recruitment materials, noting the emphasis on psychological profiles that prioritized obedience over judgment. The new Shadow Company was being designed to eliminate the human elements that Parker had found problematic in the original unit. No empathy, no hesitation, no consideration for collateral damage. Where does this leave us? Emma asked. Parker's new unit is being trained using our old mission files. They know our tactics, our capabilities, and our operational history. More importantly, they're being told that we're rogue agents who represent a threat to national security. The implications were clear. Emma and Marcus weren't just in danger from their former government. They were being hunted by highly trained operatives who believed they were serving their country by eliminating traitors. They'll come for us. Eventually, Marcus continued. Parker's systematic, methodical. He's been working through the list in order of perceived threat. You were supposed to be last because he considered you the least dangerous. Emma almost smiled at the irony. Parker's misunderstanding of her capabilities had kept her alive, but it had also made her the final target in a systematic execution program. What changed his timeline? Marcus hesitated, then pulled out a second device, this one showing surveillance footage from Pine Ridge. Emma saw herself conducting a rescue operation, using her spotting skills to locate an injured hiker from an impossible distance. The footage was followed by communications intercepts from the emergency services, highlighting her uncanny accuracy and tactical awareness. Someone reported your unusual capabilities to federal authorities. Nothing dramatic, just a routine query about a civilian who seemed to have unusually advanced skills. But it was enough to trigger a database search that identified anomalies in your background story. Emma realized that her efforts to help people had ultimately exposed her to the danger she'd been hiding from. The rescue work that had given her purpose and meaning in Pine Ridge had also demonstrated capabilities that couldn't be easily explained by her cover story. How long do we have? Emma asked. The assessment team is already in motion. They'll arrive in Pine Ridge within 48 hours, conduct surveillance, and report back to Parker's new unit. If their assessment confirms that you're the missing Shadow Company sniper, the elimination team will be deployed immediately. Emma felt the weight of 8 years of careful construction crumbling around her. The life she'd built, the relationships she'd formed, the sense of purpose she'd found in helping people, all of it was about to be swept away by decisions made by people who'd never understood what Shadow Company had really been about. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. The new unit isn't just hunting us. They're being prepared for domestic operations. Parker's convinced his superiors that there are too many trained operators living in civilian communities too. Many people with skills that could be used against the government if they decided to cause trouble. The scope of Parker's vision became clear. He wasn't just eliminating Shadow Company survivors. He was creating a precedent for hunting any former military personnel who might represent a theoretical threat to established power structures. The new unit was being trained to operate within the United States, targeting American citizens who'd once served their country. We can't run forever, Emma said. And we can't let them build a domestic assassination program using our tactics and our mission records. Marcus nodded grimly. I've been collecting evidence for 3 years. Every assassination, every cover-up, every illegal operation that Parker's conducted. I've got enough documentation to bring down his entire network, but I need help getting it to people who can act on it. Emma studied the tactical situation with the same analytical mind she'd applied to combat operations. 2 survivors of a disbanded unit, hunted by a well-funded government program, trying to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military and intelligence leadership. The odds were overwhelming, but Emma had faced impossible situations before. What kind of help do you need? The kind that only Sparrow can provide. Long-range precision work, protecting assets while they deliver evidence to media contacts and congressional oversight committees. The kind of mission that requires someone who can eliminate threats without being detected, who can provide overwatch for operations that will determine whether we live or die. Emma understood. Marcus had spent 3 years collecting evidence, but he needed someone with her specific skills to protect him while he delivered it to people who could act on it. The woman that Parker had considered too soft for sustained combat operations was being asked to use her abilities to save not just their own lives, but potentially the lives of every former military operator who might be targeted by the new domestic assassination program. There's a congressional hearing scheduled for next week, Marcus continued. Committee on Intelligence Oversight, specifically reviewing domestic applications of military assets. If we can get the evidence to them, along with testimony from surviving Shadow Company members, we might be able to stop Parker's program before it's fully operational. Emma calculated the timeline. 48 hours before the assessment team arrived in Pine Ridge a week before the congressional hearing. Enough time to prepare, but not enough to make mistakes. She would need to use every skill she'd developed, every lesson she'd learned, and every advantage she could create. I'll need to prepare Pine Ridge, Emma said. If they're coming for me, I want to control the engagement. The town has good people who don't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. Marcus looked surprised. You're not going to run? Emma stood, adjusting her rifle and checking her gear with the efficiency that had made her legendary. I've been running for 8 years. I'm tired of running. If Parker wants to test whether I'm too soft for combat, he's about to get a definitive answer. The woman who'd once been dismissed as emotionally unsuitable for sustained combat operations was about to demonstrate that precision and empathy could be the most dangerous combination in the world. Emma Chen was preparing to disappear forever, but Sparrow was about to remind the world why she'd been Shadow Company's deadliest operator. Marcus smiled for the first time since their reunion. I was hoping you'd say that. I've got a safe house, prepared communication equipment, and enough intelligence on Parker's new unit to give us a tactical advantage. But I'll need you to keep me alive long enough to deliver the evidence. Emma nodded, already formulating plans that would turn Pine Ridge into a killing ground for anyone who threatened the people she'd come to care about. The assessment team would find exactly what they were looking for, a highly skilled operator who'd been hiding in plain sight. What they wouldn't expect was that the soft sniper had spent 8 years preparing for this moment, turning a quiet mountain town into a fortress that would protect innocent people, while delivering justice to those who'd betrayed everything Shadow Company had stood for. The hunt was about to begin, but Emma had decided she was no longer going to be the prey. Emma returned to Pine Ridge with the weight of impending confrontation pressing against her chest like a physical force. The town looked exactly as she'd left it that morning, but now every familiar sight carried new significance. The coffee shop where she'd shared countless conversations with Sheriff Bradley, the hiking trails she'd guided tourists along, the rescue station where she'd coordinated dozens of successful operations, all of it was about to become a battlefield. She parked at Summit Gear and walked through the shop one final time, her fingers trailing over equipment she'd sold to people who'd trusted her recommendations. The hiking boots that had carried families safely through mountain adventures, the emergency beacons that had brought lost hikers home, the climbing gear that had enabled countless summit attempts. Each item represented a connection to the community she'd built, relationships that would be severed forever when Emma Chen disappeared. The hidden compartment behind the gun cabinet revealed equipment that hadn't seen use in years. Communication, devices that could intercept government frequencies, surveillance technology that would make the NSA jealous, and weapon systems that officially didn't exist. Emma began the methodical process of transformation, shedding her civilian identity, like a snake discarding old skin. The first step was establishing a perimeter around Pine Ridge that would allow her to monitor approaching threats while maintaining freedom of movement. Emma knew every trail, every road, every approach route within a 50-mile radius. She'd spent 8 years mapping the terrain with an unconscious tactical mind, creating mental files that would now serve as the foundation for defensive operations. Emma activated the satellite communication system and began coordinating with Marcus, who was establishing his own operational base in the abandoned mining complex 30 miles northeast of town. The old copper mine provided secure shelter, multiple escape routes, and elevation that would support long-range communications. More importantly, it was positioned to serve as overwatch for the routes that any assessment team would use to approach Pine Ridge. The secure channel crackled to life with Marcus's voice, calm and professional despite the circumstances. Base station established. I've got clear sight lines on Highway 16 and the Forest Service roads. No unusual traffic so far, but I'm tracking 3 aircraft that have passed over the area in the last 2 hours. Emma adjusted her own equipment, linking into the same surveillance network that Marcus had established. Copy that. I'm setting up observation posts around the town perimeter. If they stick to standard assessment protocols, they'll establish surveillance from multiple angles before making contact. The next phase required Emma to prepare the town itself without alarming the civilian population. She couldn't simply evacuate Pine Ridge without creating panic and drawing unwanted attention. Instead, she began subtle manipulations that would reduce civilian exposure while maintaining the appearance of normal activity. Emma called Sheriff Bradley with a carefully constructed story about unusual wildlife activity in the area, suggesting that hiking trails be temporarily closed for safety assessments. She contacted the local school district about potential weather concerns that might warrant early dismissal for the rest of the week. Each conversation was designed to reduce the number of innocent people who might be caught in the crossfire. When the assessment team arrived, the hardware store became her next stop, where Emma purchased supplies that would serve dual purposes. Emergency flares could provide illumination and distraction. Industrial chemicals could create smoke screens or disable vehicle engines. Camping equipment could establish hidden observation posts throughout the surrounding wilderness. To anyone watching, she appeared to be preparing for an extended backcountry expedition. Emma's real preparations began at sunset, when the town settled into its evening routine and her movements would be less conspicuous. She began establishing the network of positions that would allow her to protect Pine Ridge while maintaining tactical flexibility. Each position was chosen for its sight lines, cover, and escape routes, connected by paths that she'd memorized during years of wilderness exploration. The first cache was established in the bell tower of the old church, providing elevation and 360-degree observation of the town center. Emma climbed the narrow stairs with equipment that would allow her to monitor communications traffic and provide precision fire support if needed. The position offered excellent concealment while maintaining multiple escape routes through the church basement and connected buildings. The second position was carved into the rock face above the elementary school, camouflaged among the natural formations that surrounded Pine Ridge. This hide provided overwatch for the main road and the government buildings that would likely be targeted for initial surveillance. Emma stocked the position with supplies that would allow her to maintain observation for extended periods, while remaining invisible to casual detection. The third cache was established in the abandoned ranger station on the eastern edge of town, positioned to cover the hiking trails and Forest Service roads that provided access from the surrounding wilderness. Emma had restored the building's basic functionality over the years, using it as a staging area for her deeper wilderness expeditions. Now it would serve as a fallback position if the main battle moved away from the town center. Each position was connected by concealed communication lines that Emma had installed during her routine maintenance work around town. The system appeared to be standard emergency equipment, but it actually provided secure channels that could coordinate defensive operations while remaining invisible to electronic surveillance. Emma's final preparation involved the most dangerous element of her plan: bait. She needed to ensure that the assessment team would focus on her, rather than conducting broader surveillance that might endanger innocent civilians. This required her to demonstrate the capabilities that had triggered their interest while maintaining enough operational security to avoid immediate elimination. The solution came in the form of a carefully staged rescue operation. Emma contacted the emergency services about a reported missing hiker in the Devil's Canyon area, a notorious wilderness zone that had claimed several lives over the years. The location was remote enough to prevent civilian interference while providing the perfect stage for demonstrating her abilities. Emma equipped herself with the full range of her technical capabilities, including night vision equipment, advanced communication systems, and the modified Barrett rifle that had made her legendary within Shadow Company. The rescue would be conducted with surgical precision, showcasing skills that no civilian should possess, while providing concrete evidence of her true identity. The canyon presented challenges that would test even experienced search and rescue teams. Steep terrain, unstable rock formations, and weather conditions that could change rapidly created an environment where normal operations would be impossible. Emma navigated the hazards with fluid efficiency, using techniques that clearly demonstrated military training and years of specialized experience. The missing hiker was actually a training mannequin that Marcus had positioned in an area that would require extreme precision to extract safely. Emma approached the location using tactics that would be familiar to anyone with advanced surveillance training, moving with the kind of noise discipline and route selection that marked professional operators. Emma's extraction of the mannequin was conducted with textbook efficiency, using equipment and techniques that would be immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with military special operations. She documented the entire operation using her standard rescue protocols, creating a record that would be available to any agency that chose to investigate her activities. The return journey to Pine Ridge was designed to showcase her navigation abilities and wilderness skills while providing opportunities for surveillance teams to observe her capabilities. Emma took routes that would be challenging for civilian hikers while remaining accessible to trained observers, creating a perfect demonstration of her abilities without appearing to be deliberately performing for an audience. Marcus confirmed the success of the operation through their secure communications channel. Package delivered. I've got confirmation that military aircraft have increased their surveillance patterns over your area. They're definitely interested in what they're seeing. Emma settled into her primary observation position in the church bell tower, beginning the vigil that would continue until the assessment team revealed themselves. The town below appeared peaceful, its residents unaware that their quiet community was about to become the center of a deadly game of cat and mouse. The first indication of professional surveillance came at 0300 hours, when Emma's motion sensors detected movement in the forest surrounding Pine Ridge. The approaching figures moved with the careful discipline of trained operators, using cover and concealment techniques that marked them as military personnel rather than civilian hikers. Emma activated her surveillance equipment, bringing the approaching team into sharp focus through her night vision systems. 4 operators moving in standard tactical formation, equipped with military-grade weapons and communication equipment. Their movement patterns and equipment configuration identified them as members of an elite assessment unit, exactly the kind of team that Parker would deploy to evaluate potential threats. The team established observation posts around the town perimeter, positioning themselves to monitor Emma's residence and business while maintaining communication with their support elements. Their discipline was impressive, but Emma had been watching for exactly this kind of deployment. She'd prepared for professional surveillance, and she was ready to turn their own tactics against them. Emma began her counter-operation with characteristic precision. Rather than engaging the surveillance team directly, she initiated a series of activities designed to draw them into positions where she could observe their capabilities and identify their operational patterns. The game of tactical chess that had begun with their arrival was about to escalate into something much more dangerous. The first phase involved testing their reaction to normal activities. Emma left her residence using her standard morning routine, but with subtle variations. That would require the surveillance team to adjust their positions. She visited the coffee shop, conducted brief conversations with local residents, and performed routine maintenance on her vehicle. Each activity was designed to force the assessment team to reveal their presence while appearing completely normal to civilian observers. Emma's training in counter-surveillance allowed her to identify the team's communication patterns, equipment signatures, and operational procedures. They were skilled professionals, but they were operating in terrain that Emma had spent years mastering. Every advantage was hers: local knowledge, prepared positions, and the element of surprise that came from being underestimated. The second phase involved demonstrating capabilities that would confirm their assessment of her threat level. Emma conducted a reconnaissance sweep of the surrounding wilderness, ostensibly checking on trail conditions but actually testing the assessment team's ability to maintain surveillance in challenging terrain. Her route selection forced them to choose between losing contact and exposing themselves to counter-observation. Emma's movement through the forest was a masterclass in tactical navigation. She used natural cover, varied her pace to disrupt timing, calculations, and employed techniques that would be familiar to anyone with advanced military training. The surveillance team struggled to maintain contact while remaining concealed, gradually revealing their positions and capabilities. The third phase was the most dangerous: direct engagement with the assessment team's operational parameters. Emma began activities that would force them to make contact or risk losing their mission objectives. She started by accessing equipment that would trigger their surveillance systems, demonstrating capabilities that couldn't be explained by her civilian cover story. Emma assembled her Barrett rifle in full view of the surveillance team's observation posts, using the kind of practiced efficiency that marked years of professional experience. She conducted maintenance procedures that would be immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with military weapon systems, creating undeniable evidence of her true capabilities. The rifle demonstration was followed by communication activities that would trigger every electronic surveillance system in the area. Emma activated her satellite communication equipment, conducted encrypted conversations with Marcus, and accessed networks that were supposedly restricted to government use. Each activity was designed to escalate the assessment team's threat evaluation while providing evidence that would justify their next level of response. Emma's final provocation involved a shooting demonstration that would leave no doubt about her capabilities. She established a shooting position on the ridge overlooking Pine Ridge, using terrain that would be visible to the surveillance team while remaining concealed from civilian observation. The shooting exhibition was conducted with the kind of precision that had made her legendary within Shadow Company. The targets were established at extreme ranges, challenging distances that would test the capabilities of Olympic-level marksmen. Emma engaged each target with single shots, demonstrating the kind of accuracy that was theoretically impossible for civilian shooters. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, creating a pattern that would be immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with military sniper training. The assessment team's response was immediate and professional. Emma observed them activating emergency communication protocols, requesting immediate support, and preparing for enhanced surveillance operations. Their threat assessment had been confirmed, and they were transitioning from observation to active engagement protocols. Emma monitored their communications as they reported back to their handlers, confirming that the target possessed capabilities that matched Shadow Company operational parameters. The assessment was complete, and the next phase of Parker's operation was about to begin. The elimination team would be deployed within hours, and Emma would face opponents who were prepared for her abilities. The final element of Emma's preparation involved establishing the battlefield on her terms. She activated the defensive systems she'd spent years preparing, creating a network of sensors, communication relays, and support positions that would allow her to engage superior forces while protecting the civilian population of Pine Ridge. Emma sent a final message to Marcus through their secure channel. Assessment complete. They've confirmed the target profile. Elimination team will arrive within 12 hours. All positions are prepared, and civilian exposure is minimized. Sparrow is ready to engage. The woman who had been dismissed as too soft for sustained combat. Operations was about to demonstrate that precision, planning, and protective instinct could be the most dangerous combination in the world. The assessment team had found exactly what they were looking for, but they had also triggered a defensive response that would test every assumption about the former Shadow Company sniper. Emma settled into her primary fighting position, checking her equipment one final time while monitoring the communications traffic that would herald the arrival of Parker's elimination team. The battle for Pine Ridge was about to begin, and she was ready to show the world what happened when someone truly dangerous decided to stop running and start fighting back. The quiet mountain town was about to become the stage for a confrontation that would determine not just Emma's survival, but the fate of every former military operator who might be targeted by the government's new domestic assassination program. The woman they'd called too soft for combat was about to remind everyone why Sparrow had been Shadow Company's deadliest weapon. The elimination team arrived with the dawn, their black helicopters cutting through the morning mist like harbingers of judgment. Emma watched from her concealed position in the church bell tower as military aircraft established a perimeter around Pine Ridge, their movements coordinated with the precision that marked elite special operations units. Through her scope, she counted 12 operators rappelling from the helicopters, each one moving with the fluid efficiency of soldiers trained for urban warfare. Colonel James Parker stepped from the lead helicopter with the bearing of a man who had never doubted his own authority. Even at this distance, Emma could see the confidence in his posture, the way he surveyed Pine Ridge like a general examining a battlefield that had already been won. He carried himself with the same arrogant certainty that had made him dismiss her psychological fitness for combat operations, the same blindness that had led him to underestimate her capabilities. Emma activated her communication system, linking with Marcus at his overwatch position in the abandoned mine complex. His voice came through clear and steady, providing tactical updates that painted a comprehensive picture of the forces arrayed against them. Sparrow, I count 14 personnel total, plus helicopter crews standing by for rapid extraction. They've established a command post at the elementary school and positioned sniper teams on the water tower and the old grain elevator. The positioning revealed Parker's tactical approach. He was treating Pine Ridge like a hostile urban environment, establishing overwatch positions and command structures designed to contain and eliminate a single target. His operators were skilled professionals, but they were applying conventional urban warfare tactics to a situation that Emma had spent years preparing for. They were fighting her battle on her chosen ground, using methods she had anticipated and countered. Emma began her response with characteristic precision. The first target was the sniper team on the water tower, positioned to provide overwatch for the main street, but exposed to counter-sniper fire from the elevated positions Emma had prepared. She settled into her shooting stance, controlling her breathing as she calculated range, wind speed, and the ballistic trajectory that would deliver justice to the men who had come to murder her. The shot was taken at a distance of 847 yards, threading between pine branches and adjusting for the slight crosswind that swept across the valley. The bullet struck the primary sniper in the upper chest, a precise hit that eliminated the threat while avoiding lethal damage. Emma had deliberately chosen a disabling shot rather than a killing one, sending a message that she controlled the engagement and could have easily made a different choice. The response was immediate and professional. Parker's voice crackled across the radio frequencies as his team reported the sniper contact and began implementing counter-sniper protocols. Emma monitored their communications while repositioning to a secondary firing position, staying ahead of their response while maintaining the initiative that would be crucial to her survival. The second engagement came as Parker's team attempted to establish a cordon around her suspected position. Emma had anticipated this move, creating false signatures that would draw them toward prepared kill zones while she remained concealed in positions they hadn't identified. As the tactical team approached the church, Emma activated the diversionary devices she had planted throughout the building. Flashbang grenades detonated in sequence, creating confusion and disorientation while Emma engaged the team from an unexpected angle. Her rifle spoke 3 times in rapid succession, each shot precisely placed to disable rather than kill. The operators went down with shattered equipment and wounded extremities, alive but eliminated from the tactical equation. Parker's voice over the radio carried the first hint of uncertainty as he realized that his elimination team was being systematically dismantled by a single opponent who seemed to anticipate their every move. All units consolidate positions and establish defensive perimeter. Target has demonstrated advanced tactical capabilities and local terrain advantage. Emma smiled grimly as she monitored the transmission. Parker was beginning to understand that he wasn't hunting a frightened fugitive hiding in the wilderness. He was engaging an opponent who had turned his own tactics against him, who understood his operational procedures better than he understood hers. The battle escalated as Parker deployed his remaining forces in a coordinated assault on Emma's suspected positions. Smoke grenades filled the air around the church while tactical teams advanced under covering fire from the remaining sniper position. Emma watched their approach through thermal imaging systems that cut through the concealment, identifying individual targets and calculating engagement priorities. Emma's response demonstrated why she had been Shadow Company's primary sniper. Rather than engaging the advancing teams directly, she targeted their support systems with surgical precision. Communication equipment was destroyed with shots that severed cables without injuring personnel. Vehicle engines were disabled with bullets placed through critical components. Helicopter fuel lines were punctured with shots that grounded the aircraft without causing explosions. Each shot was a demonstration of capabilities that no civilian should possess. Evidence that the woman Parker had dismissed as too soft for combat was systematically dismantling his operation with precision that bordered on the supernatural. Emma was fighting a defensive battle, but she was winning through superior tactics, terrain knowledge, and skills that had been forged in conflicts that officially had never happened. The turning point came when Parker made the tactical error that Emma had been waiting for. Frustrated by his team's inability to locate and engage their target, he ordered a direct assault on the positions they believed Emma was occupying. The attack was coordinated and professional, but it required his operators to move through terrain that Emma had spent years mapping and preparing. Emma triggered the defensive system she had established throughout Pine Ridge, creating a network of obstacles and hazards that channeled Parker's team into predetermined positions. Smoke screens concealed movement while creating confusion about her actual location. Diversionary explosions drew attention away from her real positions while creating the impression of a larger defensive force. The climax of the engagement came as Parker's remaining forces converged on the church bell tower, believing they had finally cornered their target. Emma allowed them to establish their assault positions before revealing that she had never been in the building they were attacking. Her voice came over their own communication frequencies, calm and controlled despite the chaos of the battle. "Colonel Parker, this is Sparrow. You've made several tactical errors that have cost you this engagement. Your operators are skilled, Professionals, but you're fighting my battle on ground I've prepared for 8 years. Parker's response carried the rage of a man who had built his career on the assumption that he was the smartest person in any room. Surrender now, and you'll be treated according to military justice protocols. Continue this resistance, and you'll be eliminated with extreme prejudice. Emma's laughter echoed across the radio waves, carrying the confidence of someone who held all the tactical advantages. James, you always misunderstood what made Shadow Company effective. We weren't killers. We were protectors. And right now, I'm protecting this town from people who think murder is an acceptable solution to political problems. The final phase of the battle demonstrated the difference between Parker's new operators and the original Shadow Company. Emma emerged from concealment at a position Parker's team hadn't identified, moving with the fluid grace that had made her legendary. She engaged the remaining threats with non-lethal precision, using advanced tactics to neutralize opposition while minimizing casualties. Emma's rifle delivered disabling shots that shattered equipment and wounded extremities without causing permanent damage. Her movement between positions was so fluid that Parker's team couldn't maintain effective fire on her location. She controlled the engagement completely, demonstrating capabilities that transcended normal military training. The decisive moment came when Emma appeared behind Parker's command position, her rifle trained on the man who had ordered the deaths of her former teammates. Parker turned to face her with the desperate courage of someone who had finally realized that all his assumptions had been wrong. "You should have stayed dead," Parker said, his hand moving slowly toward his sidearm. Emma's expression was calm and controlled, showing none of the emotional instability that Parker had noted in her psychological evaluations. "I should have. But good people were dying because of your ambition, and someone had to stop you." The standoff lasted for several seconds, with Parker calculating his chances of reaching his weapon before Emma could respond. His mathematics were flawed by years of underestimating the woman who had never been as soft as he'd believed. Emma's shot was placed with surgical precision, disabling Parker's weapon hand without causing permanent damage. He went down clutching his wounded wrist, his authority shattered along with his assumptions about the woman he had hunted across 2 states. "You're under citizen's arrest, James, for conspiracy murder and treason against the Constitution you swore to defend." Emma kept her rifle trained on Parker while activating her communication equipment. "Marcus, packages secured. Initiate Phase 2 of the operation." Marcus's voice came back immediately, professional and satisfied. "Copy that, Sparrow. Evidence. Packages are being delivered to media contacts and congressional oversight committees as we speak. Parker's network is being rolled up by federal agents who aren't part of his conspiracy." The aftermath of the battle revealed the full scope of Emma's preparation and planning. She had spent months coordinating with Marcus to identify honest federal agents and congressional representatives who could act on the evidence they had compiled. While Parker had been focused on eliminating the last Shadow Company survivors, Emma and Marcus had been building the case that would bring down his entire operation. Federal agents arrived in Pine Ridge within hours, not to arrest Emma, but to take Parker and his surviving team into custody. The evidence that Marcus had delivered to the Congressional Oversight Committee had triggered emergency protocols that suspended Parker's authority and initiated a full investigation of Operation Silent Storm. Emma watched from her concealed position as Parker was loaded into a federal transport vehicle, his elimination team processed as accessories to multiple murders. The man who had dismissed her as too emotionally unstable for sustained combat operations was being arrested based on evidence compiled by the woman he had underestimated. Sheriff Bradley arrived at the scene with the confused expression of someone who had missed most of a movie but could see how it ended. Emma approached him slowly, her rifle secured but visible, prepared to explain her role in the morning's events. "Emma, what the hell happened here? I've got federal agents telling me there was some kind of military operation in my town, and half the buildings have bullet holes in them. Emma looked at the man who had become a friend over 8 years of shared community service, preparing to end their relationship with as much honesty as national security would allow. Tom, my real name is Emma Delacroix. I used to be a military sniper, and the people who attacked Pine Ridge this morning were trying to kill me to cover up war crimes they committed. Sheriff Bradley studied her face with the analytical eye of someone who had spent decades reading people under stress. And now? Now they're going to prison, and I'm going to disappear again. Emma Chen was a good cover identity, but she can't exist anymore. Too many people know who I really am. Bradley nodded slowly, processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew about the woman who had been Pine Ridge's most dependable resident. Will you be safe? Emma smiled for the first time since the battle had begun. I'm very good at staying safe, Tom. It's other people I worry about. The congressional hearing that followed Parker's arrest was conducted in closed session, but the results were immediate and comprehensive. Operation Silent Storm was officially terminated, its records sealed, and its surviving personnel reassigned to conventional duties. The domestic assassination program that Parker had been developing was disbanded before it could become operational. Emma testified before the Congressional Committee via secure video link, her identity protected by the same classification systems that had once been used to hunt her. Her testimony was devastating in its precision, detailing the murders of her former teammates and the systematic corruption that had enabled Parker's operation. The committee's final report, heavily redacted but publicly released, acknowledged that serious breaches of constitutional authority had occurred within certain military intelligence units. Reforms were implemented to prevent similar abuses, and oversight procedures were strengthened to ensure accountability for classified operations. Marcus emerged from hiding to testify in person, his 3 years of evidence compilation providing the documentary proof needed to support Emma's testimony. The man who had been declared dead 8 years earlier was officially reinstated to military records and awarded a medal for his role in exposing the conspiracy. The 7 murdered Shadow Company members were posthumously honored in a classified ceremony that acknowledged their service while maintaining operational security. Their families received full military honors and compensation for the government's failure to protect personnel who had served with distinction in operations that required the highest levels of trust and sacrifice. Emma watched the ceremony via satellite link from a secure location that would remain classified indefinitely. She saw Jackson's wife receive the medal that should have been presented years earlier, witnessed the honor guard that should have attended his funeral, and felt the satisfaction that came from finally delivering justice to people who had deserved better from the government they had served. The woman who had been dismissed as too soft for sustained combat operations had used precision, planning, and protective instinct to dismantle a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military command. She had demonstrated that empathy and lethality could coexist, that caring about innocent lives could make a warrior more dangerous rather than less effective. Emma Delacroix had earned her freedom through a combination of tactical excellence and moral clarity that her former commanders had never understood. The assessment that she was too emotionally connected to serve in extended combat operations had proven to be precisely wrong. Her emotional intelligence had made her the perfect weapon against enemies who believed that conscience was a weakness to be exploited. 6 months after the congressional hearings concluded, a woman walked into a small outdoor equipment store in Glacier Falls, Wyoming. She wore practical hiking clothes and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone comfortable in wilderness environments. The shop owner, a weathered man in his 60s, looked up from the inventory spreadsheet he'd been struggling with all morning. "Can I help you find something?" he asked, noting the way she moved through his store with the analytical eye of someone who understood quality equipment. "I'm looking for a partner," the woman said simply. "Someone who knows the mountains and understands that some customers need gear for more than weekend camping trips. The shop owner studied her more carefully. There was something in her bearing that reminded him of his military days, a particular kind of awareness that came from years of training and experience. What kind of partnership did you have in mind? I've got capital and expertise. You've got local knowledge and an established business. Together, we could build something that serves both the tourist trade and the people who need specialized equipment for specialized work. The negotiation took 3 weeks, but the result transformed Mountain Peak Outfitters into something unique in the outdoor equipment industry. The woman who called herself Sarah Mitchell brought inventory connections that provided access to equipment most retailers couldn't source. She also brought a customer base that paid premium prices for gear that met military specifications while maintaining civilian appearances. Sarah Mitchell was, of course, Emma Delacroix, but even that identity was now part of a carefully constructed past. The woman who ran Mountain Peak Outfitters had been born from the ashes of Emma Chen, created by federal witness protection specialists who understood that some secrets required complete identity reconstruction. Sarah had never been a military sniper, had never served in Shadow Company, and had certainly never been involved in exposing government conspiracies. The official record showed Sarah as a former corporate security consultant who had decided to pursue her passion for outdoor recreation after inheriting money from a deceased relative. Her background was boring, comprehensive, and designed to satisfy any investigation that didn't reach the classified levels where truth became dangerous. Glacier Falls was larger than Pine Ridge, a genuine resort town that attracted serious outdoor enthusiasts alongside casual tourists. The location provided perfect cover for Sarah's new life while maintaining access to the kind of terrain that kept her tactical skills sharp. The mountains around Glacier Falls were unforgiving, the kind of wilderness that demanded respect and rewarded competence. Sarah's integration into the community was gradual and deliberate. She joined the local search and rescue team, contributing skills that were impressive but not impossibly advanced. She sponsored youth programs that taught wilderness survival and outdoor ethics. She became known as someone who could be counted on during emergencies, but she was careful never to demonstrate capabilities that couldn't be explained by her cover story. The transformation from Emma to Sarah represented more than just another identity change. For the first time since leaving Shadow Company, she was building a life based on truth rather than concealment. She couldn't reveal her military background, but she could use her skills to help people without hiding the fact that she possessed unusual capabilities. The search and rescue work provided the outlet she'd always needed for her protective instincts. Sarah led teams into situations where her tactical training proved invaluable, but she presented her expertise as the result of extensive civilian training rather than military experience. She saved lives using skills that had been forged in combat, but now those skills served purely constructive purposes. The business side of Mountain Peak Outfitters served a different function. Sarah had maintained contact with Marcus and other federal agents who had emerged from the Shadow Company investigation. They occasionally needed equipment and services that weren't available through normal channels, requests that Sarah could fulfill while maintaining her civilian cover. The arrangements were subtle and carefully structured. A government contractor would purchase standard camping equipment for a wilderness training program, but the specifications would include modifications that transformed civilian gear into tactical equipment. Payment would be processed through legitimate channels, but the true value of the transaction lay in maintaining networks that could respond to threats like Parker's conspiracy. Sarah's personal life in Glacier Falls was more genuine than anything she'd experienced since her military service. She developed friendships based on shared interests rather than strategic necessity. She dated occasionally, though she was careful to choose relationships that wouldn't require deep emotional disclosure. She built a social network that provided community connection without compromising operational security. The psychological, Transformation was as significant as the practical changes. Sarah had spent years hiding her true capabilities, presenting herself as less skilled and less dangerous than she actually was. In Glacier Falls, she could acknowledge her expertise, while maintaining cover about its origins. She was still hiding, but she was no longer pretending to be helpless. The first test of Sarah's new identity came during a winter rescue operation that pushed her team beyond normal protocols. A group of experienced climbers had been caught in an avalanche on Mount Denali, trapped in terrain that defeated conventional rescue approaches. The weather window for helicopter evacuation was closing, and ground teams couldn't reach the survivors through normal routes. Sarah volunteered to lead a high-risk approach that would require technical climbing skills and tactical planning that exceeded standard search and rescue training. The mission succeeded, but her performance raised questions about her background that she deflected with stories about extensive civilian training and natural talent for dangerous work. The rescue established Sarah's reputation as Glacier Falls' most capable operator, someone who could handle situations that defeated other teams. The recognition provided perfect cover for her true capabilities while serving the community that had welcomed her. She was hiding in plain sight, using her military skills for civilian purposes, while maintaining the anonymity that kept her safe. The second test came in the form of a young woman who appeared at Mountain Peak Outfitters on a quiet Tuesday morning. She introduced herself as Katie Rodriguez, a recent military veteran who was looking for equipment to support a career in wilderness guiding. Her bearing and the specific nature of her equipment requests suggested a background that extended beyond normal military service. Sarah recognized the signs immediately. Katie moved with the controlled precision of someone who had been trained for specialized operations. Her equipment requests included items that were useful for long-range reconnaissance and precision shooting sports. Most significantly, she asked questions about advanced optics that suggested familiarity with military sniper systems. The conversation that followed was careful and indirect, two professionals feeling each other out without revealing classified information. Sarah provided equipment recommendations while Katie shared stories about her military service that contained enough detail to establish credibility without compromising operational security. Over the course of several visits, Sarah learned that Katie had served in a reconnaissance unit that had been disbanded under circumstances that paralleled Shadow Company's fate. Her former teammates had suffered a series of accidents and training mishaps that suggested systematic elimination. Katie had recognized the pattern and gone into hiding, but she was struggling to build a civilian life that provided both security and purpose. Sarah faced a decision that would define her future in Glacier Falls. She could maintain her cover and avoid the complications that came with helping another fugitive from government assassination programs. Or she could use her experience and resources to provide Katie with the support that Chen had once needed, but never received. The choice was made during a conversation that took place during a wilderness equipment testing expedition. Sarah and Katie were evaluating cold weather gear in backcountry conditions that provided complete privacy for sensitive discussions. The isolation and shared professional background created the opportunity for honest communication about their mutual situation. "Your equipment recommendations are extremely sophisticated," Katie said as they established camp in a valley that provided concealment from aerial observation. The kind of sophisticated that suggests experience with military applications. Sarah considered her response carefully before deciding on a level of honesty that felt appropriate. "I've worked with people who needed specialized capabilities. The outdoor industry serves more than just weekend hikers." Katie nodded understanding. "I'm trying to build a life that uses my skills without compromising my safety. The problem is that my skills are specifically designed for situations that don't exist in normal civilian life." Sarah recognized the exact psychological challenge she had faced during her own transition from military to civilian life. "What kind of work are you looking for?" Something that lets me protect people while staying off the radar of agencies that might want to ask uncomfortable questions about my background. Katie's honesty was calculated, revealing enough to establish trust while maintaining operational security. Sarah made her decision. There might be opportunities with our search and rescue operations. The work uses advanced skills, serves a genuine community need, and attracts people who understand that some questions don't need answers. The partnership that developed between Sarah and Katie represented a new model for former special operations personnel who needed to disappear from government attention while maintaining purpose and community connection. They created a network that could provide support, resources, and protection for military veterans whose service had made them targets rather than heroes. Mountain Peak Outfitters became the legitimate front for an organization that helped former operators transition to civilian life while maintaining readiness for threats that conventional law enforcement couldn't handle. The business provided cover and funding, while the search and rescue operations offered meaningful work that utilized military skills for constructive purposes. Sarah's final transformation was philosophical rather than practical. She had evolved from Emma Delacroix, the sniper who had been dismissed as too soft for combat, to Sarah Mitchell, the community leader who used military precision to save lives rather than take them. Her capabilities hadn't changed, but her understanding of their proper application had matured beyond anything her original commanders could have imagined. The woman who had once been told she lacked the emotional detachment necessary for sustained combat operations had discovered that emotional connection was actually her greatest tactical advantage. She fought harder, planned more carefully, and executed with greater precision when she was protecting people she cared about, rather than eliminating abstract threats defined by distant command structures. Sarah's story became a model for other shadow company survivors who emerged from hiding. As Parker's network was dismantled, Marcus established similar operations in other locations, creating a network of legitimate businesses that served their communities, while providing support for former operators who needed new identities and fresh purposes. The congressional reforms that followed Parker's conviction included provisions for veteran support that acknowledged the unique challenges faced by personnel who had served in classified operations. The programs were carefully structured to provide assistance without requiring disclosure of operational details, creating pathways for honorable transition that had never existed before. On a clear autumn morning, Sarah stood on the ridge overlooking Glacier Falls, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. The Barrett rifle that had once defined her identity was secured in her equipment cache, maintained but seldom used except for the precision shooting competitions that provided cover for maintaining her skills. Below in the valley, the town was beginning its daily routine. Coffee shops opened for the early outdoor enthusiasts, guide services prepared for the day's expeditions, and the search and rescue station conducted equipment checks that might save lives before sunset. Sarah was part of that community now, contributing skills and resources that made everyone safer while maintaining the anonymity that kept her alive. Her secure communication device buzzed once, indicating a message from Marcus or one of the other network members. Sarah smiled as she read the brief update about another successful transition. Another former operator who had found purpose and community after years of hiding from their own government. The woman who had been called too soft for combat had discovered that strength came not from emotional detachment, but from the connections that made life worth protecting. Sarah Mitchell, former Sparrow, had finally found the peace that came from using lethal skills for purely protective purposes. In the distance, a helicopter approached the valley, carrying tourists who would spend the day exploring wilderness that Sarah helped keep safe. She watched the aircraft with the analytical eye of someone who understood both its capabilities and its limitations, but without the tension that had once accompanied any unexpected air traffic. Sarah was no longer running from her past or hiding. From her skills, she had integrated both into a life that served others while honoring the training that had made her exceptional. The soft sniper had become something more dangerous than any government program could have created. A protector who chose her own battles and fought them with the precision that came from fighting for love rather than orders. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.